dazzles the eye. It fuels bold ambitions. It fires dreams of wealth and glory. And it's a shining symbol of love.
Place the ring upon her hand, completing the circle.
But it also has a darker side.
It's a huge gamble.
Holy crap.
Just like going to the casino and betting on the roulette wheel.
20 tons of mine waste are generated in order to produce just one small ring.
I can put up a tiny bit of money and I can control millions and millions of dollars worth of gold.
Industrial-sized gold mines, a boom and bust industry. The money leaves here. It doesn't stay here.
They have a vested interest in keeping this cyanide-based industry going.
And that's just a recipe for disaster.
Dangerous chemicals poured into local waterways.
Everybody needs metal. So where are you going to get it from? This is like playing detective. The best thing you can use is your eyes. You're looking for something different. We're trying to figure out what this place looked like 40 to 50 million years ago when the mineralization actually came into the rocks.
On every continent, geologists like Sean Dykes hunt for gold. On a snowy hillside, he found a vein that he hopes will lead to a motherlode.
Here at Kaleida, we can follow the vein for a mile. Then we hit two valleys, and it's not on the other side. So where is it? That becomes the challenge.
His 42 years of experience tell him it's right here. But it's a gamble. Every hole costs his company $50,000.
We're probably going to be spending about $1 million, $1.5 million this year on this project. If it's successful, we'll spend another $4 or $5 million next year. In exploration, you have huge, huge rewards, but huge, huge risks of actually finding something.
He's looked for other minerals, but he always comes back to gold.
It's built into our whole psyche. Gold is like that. No other element has that same pizzazz, nothing like gold.
But is there really nothing like it? Gold is easy on the eyes, but so is platinum. It can be molded into many forms, but so can other metals. We need gold for mobile phones and many high-tech applications, but we need other metals too. So what's so special about it?
There's something animistic, something totemic about gold. It's been part of human history for as long as human history's been recorded.
It's called a noble metal. If you find a ring from Roman times, it would look identical to the day that it went into the ground. It's incorruptible.
Gold is seen as a symbol of wealth and symbol of prosperity. It's been valued for thousands of years.
It is so linked to our sense of ourselves in ways that I think many people don't even recognize.
That link to who we think we are, or wish to be, is shared by billions of people. More gold is bought and sold every year, especially in nations with an emerging middle class. In China, after the Communist Revolution, Chairman Mao made owning gold illegal. When the ban was lifted in 2004, it opened a floodgate of demand.
也就是我们的零售销售额，在100亿以上。我们的接待顾客的这个接待人次啊，就服务次数超过100万人。
China's people don't just buy gold. They add value by handcrafting jewelry of every form. Most of it is designed to appeal to the Chinese market.
80后、90后，他看的是时尚的一种追求，看重的是一种生活品味。
Recently, China surpassed India to become the world's biggest consumer.
Chinese people worry about what's going to happen in the future. They purchase gold as a hedge against, what might happen in China in case there is, some kind of trade war with the U.S. or some other financial crisis that comes up. People feel that gold will be seen as something valuable regardless of what the situation may be.
To meet the growing demand in China and around the world, more gold is mined each year. Enough to fill 70 freight cars to capacity. But new sources are getting hard to find.
The top 500 to 1,000 feet has been explored just about everywhere.
While people have figured out how to create diamonds, no one's been able to create gold. It's something that alchemists could not create in their labs.
If you made it an infinite supply, well, then it would have no value. So scarcity is what gives it its economic power.
Scarcity plus increased demand has propelled the price per ounce to unprecedented heights. At the same time, the amount of gold in a ton of ore keeps going down.
Before you had to have 30-gram gold per ton. Today, that's super high grade for us. We're down to mining 0.5 gram per ton.
Sean Dyke's recent exploration didn't find a mother lode. But these core samples may hide gold in a smaller form.
Sometimes it's flakes the size of a pinhead. Holy crap. Thought I found some gold there for a minute. If you notice right in here, right around the brown, you see all the little specks? That's where the gold occurs. You get enough of those, that makes it an economic deposit.
Because there are fewer grams of gold per ton, miners need to dig more ore. That's why, around the world, gold mines keep getting bigger and deeper to get that high price per ounce by any means necessary. Even the legendary sites of 19th century gold rushes are being re-examined. If the old-time miners left gold behind, their claims may be worth a second look. While Sean Dykes searches for a new gold strike, this man is intrigued by a deposit discovered in Nevada in 1859. A bonanza that made Virginia City a boomtown.
There's over 700 miles of underground tunnels right beneath us where we're driving right now. It was literally considered one of the richest places on Earth, with some of these buildings rivaling Boston, New York, and London. It's hard to imagine the old-timers could extract over 8 million ounces of gold with picks and shovels. The wealth that was created, the technologies that were developed here were used all over the world.
Corrado de Gasperis believes there's still gold in these hills.
The mining industry has this maverick streak to it. The treasure hunters and risk takers. I didn't have a mining background, and I'm not a treasure hunter per se. So what really attracted me was there was a vast library of known geological data.
The data tells de Gasperis that the claims of the old-time miners are not played out. He also learned that their claims are still in force.
There was hundreds and hundreds of patented mining claims, thousands of unpatented mining claims. It took a tremendous amount to entitle it.
De Gasperis has determined the combined claims hold at least 1.3 million ounces of gold.
We have over 7 miles of contiguous strike, of which at least half has been unexplored and undeveloped.
Like wannabe gold tycoons everywhere, de Gasperis is gambling that he can extract the gold at a profit based on the world price. If the price tumbles, he's toast. If it stays high or goes higher, he's rich. It all depends on decisions made 8,000 kilometers away.
Gold travels discreetly. Most days of the week at Heathrow Airport, there'll be between 5 and 10 aircraft landing with a sizable shipment of gold going into a secure vault. Here in London, we also have the Bank of England, holding gold for other central banks around the world.
In vaults throughout the city, the world's biggest banks hold a total of 600,000 gold bars. Enough, if stacked on top of one another, to reach the edge of space. London is also the global hub for trading gold.
London is a spot market. It's all about this, a physical market. It's all about the hard metal.
The market decides what an ounce is worth. But every business day, a small group of bankers sets an influential benchmark price, using a method that was devised a century ago. Five bank representatives would meet, each with a Union Jack at their place at the table. The chairman set an opening price. The bankers called their trading floors to find out if the price attracted orders to buy or to sell. The chairman tried different prices until buy and sell orders balanced. The bankers put down their flags, and the final price was fixed. The daily gold fixing still sets the benchmark price that informs those who trade gold by the ton and those who sell it by the ounce.
Now, the interesting thing about a 1 ounce gold bar or coin is it holds its value in the very, very long term. Money dissolves, whereas gold maintains what economists call purchasing power parity. It's a safe haven asset, and it'll protect you in times of economic uncertainty. If you had a 1 ounce coin in biblical times, 2,000 years ago, it would buy you a suit of clothing. In Henry VIII's time, an ounce of gold would buy you a suit of armor. And today, you can get suited and booted for £1,000. It maintains its value in the long term, unlike money, which decays.
But where does the value come from? 20% of the world's gold ends up as plain metal bars. 50% is fashioned into pretty things, beautiful to look at. But why is gold a valuable asset?
First of all, gold is not an asset class, it's a religion. And people have a view about gold which goes beyond what is realistic about any normal asset class.
People have believed in the value of gold for millennia. When paper money was introduced, leaders feared people wouldn't believe it had value unless it was backed by gold stored in national vaults. After World War II, the United States refined this idea into something called the gold standard. It promised that U.S. gold would always sell for $35 per ounce.
In the post-war period, you now have all of these dollars and dollar-backed securities out in the world that theoretically can be redeemed for gold. That's fine, as long as you've got enough gold to back it up.
But in the late 1960s, foreign investors believed an ounce was worth more than $35. They bought U.S. gold by the ton. At the same time, billions of new dollars were needed to fund the Vietnam War. Gold production couldn't keep up.
The U.S. didn't have enough gold. Bizarrely, certain figures in the Johnson administration embarked on what can only be called a kind of 20th century alchemy quest. It's done completely in secret, and because it's the mid-1960s, it's called Operation Goldfinger. The idea was to use the most state-of-the-art technology to find gold where it had never been thought to be before. Is there gold in ocean water? Is there gold in plants? Is there gold in deer antlers? What if we used nuclear explosives and blew out all the gold and then leached it up through a chemical process? This was completely unrealistic. We're going to utterly absurd lengths to prop up this system that clearly just doesn't work anymore.
On August 13th, 1971, President Richard Nixon pulled the plug.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold in the best interest of the United States.
The U.S. could now print more dollars without the need for more gold. Gold believers expected the sky would fall. But as it turns out, people believe in a dollar backed by a superpower just as much as a dollar backed by gold.
Here's the receipt. Have a nice day.
Throughout America, the economy continues to grow as the nation becomes ever more affluent. On the markets, gold now trades like any other commodity, but its aura of wealth and power lives on, pushing the price higher.
In January 2000, tax was removed from investment gold. What this did overnight was it made it accessible to ordinary investors. And from January 2000, gold went up 16% year on year until 2008, when the economic crisis hit. And it traveled at 24% a year. So gold went absolutely ballistic.
The higher the price, the easier it is for mining companies to attract investment.
You have the gold bugs and people that love gold, so they will invest. Sometimes I call it mining the public. It's a huge gamble, and that's why people do it.
At 140, there's about
And they're addicted, just like gambling. You have got people that are crazy about gold, and they are just like going to the casino and betting on the roulette wheel. The odds are slightly better on the roulette wheel.
Sean Dykes has convinced his investors to bet on a new claim in Montana, on a rocky peak called Emigrant Mountain. He plans to drill as soon as he gets regulatory permissions.
The potential here is for 1 million ounces of gold. That's the reward. The risk is it there?
Emigrant Mountain is just a few kilometers from a national treasure. Yellowstone is America's first national park. It's been protected from development since 1872. Until the price of gold skyrocketed, no one would have considered a major mine on Emigrant Mountain. The cost of new roads and infrastructure would have been too great.
I came to Yellowstone Park as a sophomore in college. All of it just seemed so wild and untouched that I was very drawn to it. This is a giant life source for us. The quality of life that this brings is as rich as, any dollar figure that you could possibly need. It is a very uneasy feeling to think that one toxic spill and it would definitely not be the same river that it is today.
One of the big impacts from gold mining operations are acid mine drainage. And this is what it looks like. This is acid mine drainage that I collected downstream from the Zortman-Landesky gold mine here in Montana. The sulfuric acid is like battery acid, so it's toxic to fish and other aquatic life downstream. Most gold these days are low-grade deposits where there's a small percent of gold interspersed in a large volume of rock. The most common method of mining gold is cyanide leaching. They're using a cyanide solution to extract the gold.
Cyanide by the ton is mixed with ore to liberate the gold. A process used at nearly every major gold mine in the world. The toxic byproducts are stored in tailings ponds that can hold billions of tons of waste, contaminated with cyanide, arsenic, and heavy metals.
Inevitably, we see at so many sites around the country where the company leaves, the company files for bankruptcy, and we're left with these very toxic sites forever.
The risk outweighs any possible reward, and I don't think that gambling with our quality of life is worth it.
You've got the environmental opposition, which won't allow you to build anything near anybody. They absolutely try to protect everything under the sun. Yet, for your camera, your sound, everything here, it's all metal. Everybody needs metal. So where are you going to get it from?
A mine on Emigrant Mountain would produce gold worth at least $1 billion and provide hundreds of jobs. Residents Brian Wells and Joe Josephson remember that Emigrant Gulch has been mined before.
There was hundreds of people up and down this creek during the Depression, and if they would work 6 or 7 days a week, they could scratch out enough gold to trade for groceries at Emigrant.
Yeah.
But it saved them.
Sure.
It saved them in that respect.
They're mining for food.
Yes. Yeah, my mother and father-in-law were among the ones doing that.
I have photos. There's not a single tree anywhere on these hillsides. The old miners cut them all down. Why would we want to go back to that? When we first heard about this project, we got the scoping notice from the Forest Service. First thing we did is we went and found this technical report. You look on the map here and you go, oh, it's literally everything we see in front of us, plus most of everything that's behind us. It's the whole valley. They're saying that there's 2 billion tons of ore. That's something like 300 trucks a day, 365 days a year for 20 years. They told me this, we're not going to come up and rape and pillage your backyard. We would never do that. Those were their words. And I'm like, you can't take 1 billion tons of ore out of here, plus all the waste rock, without destroying this incredible landscape. I mean, look at it.
I'm really a conservative person, and I like to joke with people. Rush Limbaugh is too liberal for me.
What is that, huh? The boys.
There's good places to mine, but this is not one of them. Industrial-sized gold mines, the money leaves here. It doesn't stay here. Our pioneering, spirited entrepreneurs, that money stays here. And it continues to feed other businesses. And Yellowstone tourism has been increasing without a hiccup hardly since 1946. 71 years of growth. That's pretty dependable. Somebody could come here and play Gold Rush Montana for 2 or 3 years, but the damage done to all of our businesses goes on for a long time. Why would you destroy an economy for something that's historically short-lived, a boom and bust industry that has a horrible reputation, and they've earned it?
Some of the locals have decided to get together to fight the mine.
The coalition has hardcore Trump supporters in it, Obama supporters, and independents. Some of these people are people I probably would have never talked to before.
It would help the local economy. Young people can't afford to live here.
But there's opportunity, too, for young people to make good money here with some imagination and a work ethic.
There's an interesting difference between a product that is gold and an experience. And what we make a living off of here is the experience of this landscape and the value of the beauty. It's much harder to compare to my ring. Somehow this is more valuable than an experience, when actually it's the opposite.
The risk is big. So if you're gonna do mining, then make sure you've got a long-term way to pay back the loss if there was a disaster. Just start there.
Gold has always had a huge benefit, but also fear because of the magic word cyanide, big tailings ponds and these type of things. We come here regularly to talk, to update the city council, show them what we're doing. We've got environmentalists, we've got public relations, we've got government relations, and so it has very little impact.
I reviewed the track record of 27 operating gold mines responsible for roughly 93% of U.S. gold production. And we found that 100% of these mines had experienced spills of hazardous materials.
Most spills originate from tailings ponds held in place by earthen dams.
Mining technology is generating a larger and larger volume amount of mine waste that has to be stored behind taller and taller tailings dams, and that's just a recipe for disaster.
What the people of Yellowstone are afraid of is something like this.
It may be the worst environmental disaster in British Columbia's history. 10 million cubic meters of wastewater containing dangerous chemicals poured into local waterways when the earthen dam surrounding a tailings pond collapsed.
lake was just full. You couldn't see anything but wood, big piles of wood. Some of it was like 20 feet high. Man, it was just, you just didn't know. Yeah, there's no words.
Debris floated downstream through First Nations territory.
When the disaster happened, communities all around responded like it was a death. People were crying and people were grieving because they knew that having all of what was in that mine, all of that pollution, rush down into the water and to pollute the entire Fraser watershed.
The Fraser River flows all the way to the Pacific. This is where salmon come to spawn. The fear is that contaminated water will destroy the salmon fishery.
We knew we only had days to fish. We had fishermen from my community go down and fish the Fraser. And they fished it hard for at least 2 days because they were worried about the tailings affecting the salmon. And being a salmon people, that was devastating.
We have First Nations that live all along the Fraser River down the ocean
that's what I'm
that are
saying.
depending on that salmon, which we just put our nets in the river yesterday.
If we have that impact, then we are responsible.
The mine's owner, Imperial Metals, is responsible for building and maintaining the tailings dam.
The Mount Polley Dam was designed as a centerline dam. And then what happened, money got tight. And they decided that they were going to build it much steeper. They'd had a lot of rain, they had a lot of excess water. They were trying to manage it by storing it in their tailings pond and then treating it and discharging it, and they were waiting for a discharge permit. So that dam was just as full as it was allowed to be. What they didn't know was that under a portion of the dam was an old glacial lake. And that glacial lake basically behaves like a banana peel. And that piece of dam just gave way, just slipped right out.
No one at the company has taken personal responsibility for the overloading that led to the disaster.
Can you tell me how much your insurance coverage is? And do you have the money if it costs $500 million to clean it up?
We don't have $400 million in the bank, so we'll have to make that to do it.
And we're building this pipeline.
Imperial Metals wanted to reopen the mine as soon as possible. Others wanted the government to hold off until the underlying issues were resolved. Lawyer Dimitri Lascaris has fought for and against mining companies in Canada's courts. He's learned a lot about the relationship between industry and government.
Politicians at all levels of government seem to be quite comfortable with the fact that this industry is the dominant force in Canada's economy, and one upon which we become extraordinarily dependent.
This is Brookfield Place. This is where Barrick Gold, the largest gold mining company in the world, is headquartered. This is where the major law firms that service the mining industry are situated. Over here you have the Royal Bank of Canada's headquarters, which is the largest bank in Canada. And just a little bit further up Bay Street, you have the Toronto Stock Exchange, the largest mining stock exchange in the world.
50% of the world's mining companies are based in Canada. And as a result of its importance to the Canadian economy, it's acquired a very considerable influence over the political process. For years, the government here has placed complete and utter faith in the executives of mining companies to do the right thing. It was voluntary. Mining companies look for opportunities to foist upon others the costs of their businesses. Their model was essentially the externalization of risk.
Less than a year after the disaster, the Mount Polley mine was allowed to reopen.
The first thing that comes to mind when I hear the word gold is like dirty gold. It's death, it's violence, it's colonization. I think of all of the indigenous peoples of North and South America and around the world, people from all over who have suffered. For them to be so rich, there are so many who have to be so poor. That's what I think of when I see gold.
There is inherently a conflict, but I think that the conflict is easily resolved with innovation. With innovation, you can extract socially responsibly, you can extract profitably, and you could go beyond reclamation. You could go to restoration, and it's a win-win all the way. The industry has seemingly always been enabled, first by new science, and then affecting new process with that science.
Nevada is where the cyanide process was perfected.
Cyanide processing is over 120 years old. There hasn't been a hard economic driver for the industry to innovate. What we need is an economic breakthrough where it is clearly faster, it is clearly safer, it is clearly more efficient and cheaper. Then the industry will have to respond to it. And it'll be like cracking ice.
Corrado de Gasperis has invested in a new green solution developed by Nobel Prize-winning chemist Sir Fraser Stoddart. The process uses hydrogen peroxide to liberate the gold, which is then captured using cornstarch. Toxic cyanide and tailings ponds are not required.
It is maybe 50 times faster than the cyanide process, and then you add on to that the fact that it's not toxic.
What I really am excited about is that the science works. We're not really at an inventing it stage. Sir Fraser's done that, right? We're at a process improvement. And process improvement, the obstacles there are much, much smaller to get over.
It would be my dream come true if it were to be adopted across the planet. That will give me enormous satisfaction that I've contributed something to society and to the environment on a global scale. Here you are, gold in all its glory. Wonderful, wonderful.
Taking the new process global will require a major buy-in from the mining sector.
We are looking at an industry that has been in place for more than a century, and in the hardcore parts of that industry there's going to be resistance as always. You know, we've always used cyanide and we will continue to use cyanide, and they feel they're comfortable using it, and they don't want to know about something that's new.
Like the mining industry, gold's banking sector is more comfortable with the old ways, like the daily gold fixing that sets the benchmark price. But this tradition now coexists with a high-tech market in gold futures. Futures traders don't invest in gold mines or physical gold. They place bets on whether the price will rise or fall.
Financial markets were supposed to provide capital to the business entrepreneurs in order for them to create wealth for society. Today, financial markets exist only to make money for themselves, as just places for speculation.
Now I can go onto the COMEX, or I can go into the over-the-counter markets, and I can put up a tiny bit of money, and I can control tons of gold, and I only have to have a fraction of that in my account. Now, that creates an enormous amount of fake gold.
Trillions of dollars in virtual gold derivatives now dwarf the physical gold market.
In a nutshell, gold is manipulated, and the paper gold markets are really where the manipulation takes place.
It's one thing to think the market is rigged. It's another thing to prove it. Economist Rosa Abrantes-Metz specializes in market price manipulation.
Everybody has a conspiracy theory about who's rigging prices at why, and the government wants it this way, the others want it another way.
When Abrantes-Metz began to investigate, she learned about the London daily gold fixing.
I made some calls, I talked to market players, and when I was told how gold prices were set, I thought, I can't believe it. It must be wrong. There is essentially no other market in the world where competition authorities would allow a small group of competitors privately talking to each other about what prices should be. They have the ability to move prices in directions that are favorable to them and disadvantage others. So the whole setting was problematic.
Abrantes-Metz believes potential problems worsened when traders invented virtual gold derivatives.
Prior to derivatives, if you were to move the price of gold by 2 cents, you would make a profit, and for example, in spot trading. But now, if you move the price by 1 or 2 cents, you're going to make millions of dollars.
Abrantes-Metz found out that in 2004, the bankers stopped meeting in person and met by conference call.
As soon as this call starts, the banks know exactly the direction the price is going before anybody else in the market. So they can call their buddy at whatever and say, hey, prices are going up. Let's start trading X, Y, and Z.
She needed evidence that the daily gold fixing was price manipulation.
The first thing that I noticed was that prices on average dropped very significantly during the fixings. I would expect prices to go up just as frequently as they go down. What I realized was that they didn't. It makes no sense. We know prices are not supposed to behave this way, and we know who are setting them. And whether there is rigging or not, the reality is that this structure is easy to rig. The gains get to be concentrated in a small set of institutions who then make a huge amount of illegal profits out of these manipulations. And who lost? Everybody who traded with them. My work launched 30 lawsuits in the United States and then helped launch investigations around the world.
The U.S. Department of Justice began probes of all 5 banks for price manipulation.
Now it's up to the courts, but discovery on the plaintiff's side has already showed emails of coordination among some of the banks to rig prices. If plaintiffs and defendants agree to settle, the evidence may never come out.
Whatever happens in court, the banks have already made some reforms. But the daily fix has not been abolished. Bankers still set gold's benchmark price every business day. Several years have passed since the Mount Polley disaster. Much of the watershed looks healthy again. But this lake still has mine waste on the bottom.
It's got an eerie feeling to the place still, doesn't it? This is what's at the bottom of the lake yet. That's the stuff.
I don't think that stuff decomposes, does it?
No, it's...
No, that's there forever.
That's there forever.
Yeah, this is pretty grim. That's supposed to be drinkable.
Most people, as far as I know, are using bottled water.
Scientists contracted by Imperial Metals say the water is safe to drink.
A lot of people don't trust what's going on. They don't trust what the mine says, that the water's fine, the fish is fine, everything's fine, like there's no problem.
Two independent scientists have begun a long-term study.
We decided to focus primarily on looking at the quality of the sediment and the material that got delivered into the lake, and to try and start to understand the effect on the ecosystem.
The community really appreciates the fact that we're doing independent research and we're not paid by the mine. So our allegiance is with the community. The sediment gets ingested by filter feeding invertebrates, zooplankton, and then those zooplankton are the fish food that gets eaten.
Not surprisingly, the sediment is contaminated. Copper, arsenic, selenium, vanadium, there's some mercury as well. It still looks beautiful. Visually, it's no different, but there's that cloud hanging over it, as well as the cloud within the border of the fact that it's an environment that's been heavily disturbed and even contaminated.
There are more unanswered questions regarding the salmon in the water because we're in year 3 of a 4-year salmon cycle. So next year will be really telling, and the year after.
The government shared costs with Imperial Metals for a cleanup that many believe is inadequate. There were no other sanctions.
The mine has faced no charges. They're basically just getting away with, the largest environmental disaster in Canadian history.
It's shocking that that company hasn't had to pay a very substantial penalty. It's shaping up to be another example of how the general public is made to bear the costs of these activities whilst the executives appropriate the profits. One of the wealthiest Canadians, Murray Edwards, is a major shareholder of Imperial Metals. Murray Edwards had a very close relationship with the former BC Premier Christy Clark.
We say yes to the men and women who work here.
In the 2012 provincial election, Mr. Edwards organized a $1 million fundraiser for Miss Clark. And at the end of the day, she actually squeaked out a victory. And her policies towards the mining sector have been extraordinarily favorable.
If you can't get the resource out of the ground, you are going to imperil the future of our entire province.
No meaningful penalty was imposed upon Imperial Metals. And it's difficult not to conclude that part of the reason for that is because the government was favorably inclined towards Mr. Edwards and his company because of the financial support he'd given to them.
It's really important that we get it right with Mount Polley and that there's some justice brought, because this is setting really dangerous precedents in British Columbia and Canada and around the world.
Worldwide, there have been several recent Mount Polley scale disasters.
There's nobody that knows how many of these failures there are. The reason they get covered up is because it's an embarrassment to the company that has been operating them, and it's embarrassing to the regulatory agency that supposedly had responsibility for that.
Those practices have to change. We have to have a higher valuation on water than we do on gold.
Yellowstone National Park is the first national park, and it's sacred to all Americans today. That's why I'm excited to announce segregation of 30,000 acres of Forest Service land.
Gold mining and exploration has been banned in the greater Yellowstone area for 2 years. There is now a bill before Congress to make the ban permanent. But passage is far from certain. If the bill is defeated, Emigrant Mountain could soon be a gold mine.
I've read quite a few statements that President Trump has made, and he talks about special places like this need to be preserved. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Those who love this wilderness long to hope. But whether its waters are more valuable than gold is yet to be decided. Far from the big gold mines and the big gold markets, there's another side to the story. It's not about whether the price will rise or fall, or whether natural wonders will be preserved. It's about life and death in the shadow of gold.